Apologies for the delay. How does the host himself start the program late? Inexcusable. Well, I was just fielding a call from the Iyer Core Ensemble, also called as ICE. And this is like a Freemason society in the Iyer community. And they called me to express some concerns about their brother Abhijit Iyer-Mitra. And he has been, they told him to rein it back a little bit, that the Iyengars are like a wayward younger brother who has lost his way, and he will come back to his uh, good ways in due course of time. Abhijit, namaskar and welcome to PGurus channel.
Veil, all lies. See, Asuras and Devas were also brothers. That does not mean Asuras are just wayward people. Incarnate evil. Shiva Shiva, Shiva Shiva, Shiva Shiva, yareல்லாம் brother into கூப்பிடுறோம். Shiva Shiva, Muruga.
Well, ICE shall closely monitor your utterances. So I just wanted to let you know that for the moment, I have doused the embers. I have doused the concerns. I told them that Abhijit is at heart.
You have engaged in appeasement. Appeasement did not stop Hitler. This is the lessons of 1938 in Munich that you need to learn.
Fair enough. I understand that. Now let's jump into questions. Malyaban Bhattacharya wants to know, what do you think about the Chinese loan scams in India? It's akin to Indians scamming Americans who live on pensions.
What are these loan scams? I don't even know what they are.
Oh, you don't know this? Oh,
No.
Many companies, they have a like usurious interest rates. They'll give you a loan based on negligible.
No, but how are Chinese loan companies even operating in India?
Well, they say that some of the companies, such as the name brands, were having some side businesses, if you will, and that's why you saw many of the companies being shut down recently. So there is a certain amount.
Look, I don't know about this at all, but
Okay.
If they got into bed with the Chinese, they got what they deserved.
Well. We'll find out. Well, there is also an allegation that China is also printing counterfeit currency of Indian currency.
Possibly. I mean,
so see, that's the easy way to then have.
Anything you tell me about China, I am quite happy to believe.
Okay. Next question, please. Simple life. Will the plant-based meat and lab-based meat affect health the same way genetically modified seeds and plants did?
Look, I'll tell you, we need long-term studies on it. But at the ITC Maratha in Mumbai, I actually tried some plant-based meat masquerading as chicken nuggets, and I was very, very impressed, boss. Kushal Mehra was there with me. You can ask him as well. And we really couldn't tell the difference between chicken nuggets and this. It's getting close to reality. I do think we need some long-term studies on its effects, but overall, I think weigh it this way: if you want to eat it versus saving the life of an animal, optimally as a society, we should be getting away from slaughtering animals completely, right? And basically you're cooking it, so any DNA based effects and things like that, unlike say mRNA, which is like really dangerous, it's basically a benign AIDS virus, uh, uh, for lack of a better word. uh, the effects are going to be, I personally think from what I'm reading, are going to be very limited. I am not, at least with plant based meat, we've seen, I certainly haven't read any indisputable evidence that it affects your health the same way, right? Uh, if it did, we would have seen a lot, because, meat lobbies are extremely powerful. I'm sure they're trying to find ways, but no. And if they do, I think we'll only see the results about 10-15 years down the line through long term studies. Remember, the genetically modified seeds and plants affect you a different way. Most GM plants have a terminator gene, which means if you grow corn, you can't just pluck the corn out of the cob and use it in your next season for planting. And the problem is about 8%, even if you're not using GM products, 8% of your crop, if GM products are going up to 8% of your crops, if GM products are going in the next field, get cross pollinated by this, and it affects your product. And there has to be consequences, there has to be penalties for it, because if your entire argument was that you're putting out these things which will give you much higher yield, that are much more pest resilient but are sterile in that they cannot reproduce, how is it that they're going and uh, uh, infecting the gene pool of or at least the reproductive cycle of crops that are not GM modified for people who do not want your GM modified crops, and introducing a terminator gene in there? So these things, it is more a food security issue than it is a health based issue, as far as I can tell. Would there be effects? See, I'm not seeing any of the compounds in it to what shall we say, uh, cause significant negative effects. Let's see. This is a long term study, you have to see 10-15 years minimum.
Thank you. Sandman 1306, how much impact did the Marathas have on Hinduism?
Do you mean the practice of Hinduism, as in rites and rituals and things like that? I'm not really sure, because rites and rituals were an oral tradition. We carry on certain things orally and through osmosis. We don't really document it and write it down. In fact, when the British wanted to translate the Vedas, there was a lot of opposition to it, and people were considered traitors, etc., etc., etc. But as a community, they gave Hindus a breathing space. So it was more the social impact rather than the actual, uh, you know, uh, ritualistic or theological impact.
I can add to that. Recently, I had interviewed the current king of Tanjavur, who's responsible for the upkeep of several temples in and around the Brihadishwara temple in Tanjavur, also called the Big Temple. And he's one of his name is Babaji Raja Bhosle Chhatrapati. He's a direct descendant of Shivaji Chhatrapati. And he had mentioned that when they came to Tanjavur, for example, they found that the rituals of how the worship is done was different from what they were used to in Maratha, in Pune. For instance, there are many temples where you, as a bhakt, can go and pour water yourself on the murti, whereas in the south, you have to always stay outside the Garbhagraha. And he said, we said that's fine. If this is how you worship our gods, that is fine with us. So they never tried to change that. So this way, they have always been, taking the big picture in mind, keeping the big picture in mind. Malyaban Bhattacharya, second question. Boy, this guy has lined up a lot of questions for you, Abhijit. Do you believe in the mythical lost continent of Atlantis theory? Why or why not?
No, because it's a very late European invention, which anybody can come up with this shit, and just if it gains enough traction, it becomes this big thing. I think the Atlantis theory was the precursor of the aliens theory. Is it possible? Sure. Do I believe it exists? No. Did Gökbeli Tepe actually bust? Realistically, did Gökbeli Tepe? I know it's Göbekli Tepe, but I call it Gökbeli Tepe. Deal with it. Did Gökbeli Tepe bust our view of Stone Age societies? No, emphatically no. Because when you discovered the New World, those were Stone Age societies. And yet they were building cities, they had empires, they ran temples. The issue is, I will believe all of this when I see archaeological proof, not postulation proof. Okay. Could there have been, prior to that dryad in about 13,000 years ago, 12 and a half or 13,000 years ago, Is it possible that humans reached a higher stage of development? Sure. Was it a lovely civilization that had all these flourishing philosophy and arts and all that shit? No, absolutely not. It's just physically impossible, right? Did it reach a certain level of sophistication, say similar to Gökbeli Tepe? Sure. But big empires and things like that, where there was high philosophy, literature, high theology happening, absolutely not. Now, people like Graham Hancock and things like that, and Joe Rogan say, well, actually, Joe Rogan says this, that, they use psychedelics to make this society an alternate plane, and it was about love and peace. Are you kidding me? Are you serious? All Stone Age societies anthropologically are extraordinarily violent societies. There is not a single Stone Age society that did not engage in, human sacrifice of some kind, or very frequently cannibalism as well. So to go around saying, "Oh, this was peace," I mean, you look at the discovery of the discovery of the Americas. There was not one society out there that did not, in some way or the other, practice torture sacrifices, except the Incas, but they did practice human sacrifices. Okay, so this is complete nonsense that it was all peaceful kumbaya nonsense before that. So no, I do not believe in this Atlantis theory, and certainly not a one point of transmission.
Mandar Kandik wants to know what has been the impact of internet based knowledge reaching a wider audience in the developing world on political and social narrative building ability of the established world.
Wow, that's a really complex question. What has been the impact of an internet based knowledge? Well, basically, it's busted monopolies. Okay, I don't think there has been a bigger monopoly buster than the internet, because it democratized both the acquisition of information, but more importantly, it demolished the monopolization of the distribution of information. So if you're a person who says, well, there was an Atlantis before, you would have been laughed out and you would have been put in the fiction category. Today, a lot of people are free to believe you. I don't believe it, but a lot of people are free to believe you. And you go and read what you want to read. So if you believe that the Trump election was stolen, you're free to believe that. The Democrats and all lefty websites will try to cull that, saying, oh, that's disinformation, it's misinformation. Look, most of us aren't there on the internet to actually get the truth. Most of us are there for self validation and to find other people who think exactly the same. That's not information, disinformation, or misinformation. There is such a thing as the right to fake news. There's a right to conspiracy theory. There's a right to I mean, look, for me, religion is the biggest unproven news around. Short of somebody actually coming in Vishwarupa in front of me, I'm not going to believe in the existence of God. So what, are you going to censor all religious messaging on Twitter? You can't, no? So here's the thing. Everybody has the right to believe what they believe: stolen elections, not stolen elections, or in India, tampered voting machines, whatever. Great, let it be. And I think it's brilliant in that sense.
Next question, please. Simple Life wants to know why did Advani / Vajpayee hand over Hindu groups fighting illegal Bangladeshi immigrants encroaching on their land to Bangladesh army? Bangladesh government supported anti-India activity.
Did they? I'm not too sure about that, Simple Life. I'm not sure that they handed over Hindu groups. I'm sorry, I don't remember this episode, and I doubt very much that they would have done anything like that. Yes, the Bangladesh military has in the past supported it. They don't do that anymore. In fact, if you remember, there was that big attempted coup by the Bangladesh Rifles, after which they were disbanded or whatever. Do you remember at a time The Bangladeshis killed Indian, was it CRPF or BSF troops, and transported them like animals with their hands tied to poles. The corpses were handed over that way to us. Uh, there was a very specific Bangladesh Rifles aspect to it. They tried a coup, disbanded, etc. They do not support that kind of thing anymore.
Hey, question on Bangladesh before we go to the next question, Abhijit. I still hear stories that the military is very much in control, even though Sheikh Hasina Wajid says that she is the prime minister. How
They're
true
not
is
in
the
control.
situation?
They're not in control, but they're still very powerful. And it's more relevant because Sheikh Hasina has in effect turned it into a one-party state,
Hmm.
right? Because she leads the Awami League, Khalida Zia's party, the BNP. They have been decimated. They are no longer politically relevant. And the only other opposition is the Jamaat-e-Islami, which nobody wants to see in power. Even the army doesn't want to see them in power, though they help them out at the back every now and then because they believe there should be an opposition. There need to be an alternative. But if there is no alternative, look, the army is the only one that becomes the alternative. But
What happened
Sheikh
to
Hasina
Khalida
has been
Zia's party?
keeping. One second,
What?
let me finish.
Yeah.
Let me finish. Sheikh Hasina has been keeping the army very, very content through large arms deals, through which they get a lot of money. Whatever they want happens. They are a much more disciplined force than, say, the Pakistan army that doesn't keep interfering in every aspect. So, if you saw the Al Jazeera documentary about the Bangladesh army chief and his corruption, it went completely unpunished. I'd recommend. I mean, I'd never recommend Al Jazeera. It's the biggest denizen of GB Street on the international scene. But do watch this thing about the Bangladesh army chief. It's quite fascinating, and how he managed to get away without any prosecution, in spite of everything being captured on camera. Right. Uh, Now, what was the question you were asking?
Can you get back the question again, please? No, I just, this was in between questions. I just asked you how the political dispensation in Bangladesh was. Next question, please. When Shah Bano judgment was reversed, was the CJI back then punished in some way? If yes, is this why the current CJI is going more woke?
I don't know, but look, you couldn't punish the CJI at that time because, well, the CJI is the culmination of your career, no? After that, it's more a question of denial. You're denied a Rajya Sabha seat, you're denied commissions, sitting on commissions and Sarkari Bangla, etc., etc., etc. No, I don't think so. I mean, not punishment as you know it in terms of active punishment. Uh, why is the current CJI going more woke? Well, let him become CJI and we'll see how woke he gets. I have seen the wokest and wokest of CJIs turn into puppets once they become CJI. Does everyone remember Gogoi? Gogoi literally sat out with those other three judges and
Yeah,
gave a
yeah.
press conference against the government and all
Chalameshwar
of
and
that.
others. Yeah.
Yeah. And after that, he became a Sarkari tattoo and got given a Rajya Sabha seat and everything. Everybody on the left detests Gogoi today, right? Let's see what happens with Chandrachud, because the thing is, you may not be weak, but your greatest weakness are your children always. You may not be crooked, but do you really think your children aren't?
Ask AIM. Mr. K wants to know, is terrorism back in Punjab? Should president's rule be imposed in Punjab?
It's at the embryonic phase. President's rule would be a huge mistake. It would actually exacerbate the forces of all the centrifugal forces that are going to lead to terrorism. Instead, what you need to do is you need to start restricting the powers of the chief minister out there, have an interventionist active governor who will be able to veto and keep sitting on bills and passing them off to the center to, like Gujkoka, for example, when Modi passed Gujkoka, which was word to word same to M Koka, which was the Maharashtra version of the anti-terror bill. The governor refused to sanction it and sent it up to the Home Ministry. This is an ultimate power that governors do have. And to look at it very carefully, I think the best way of dealing with this is to hammer on at corruption, which, as we know, the AAP does a heck of a lot of.
Next question, please. Sandman 1306 never understood why the fall of Constantinople triggered the search for direct sea route to India. Constantinople was never part of the trade route, so why was it an important trigger point?
Right. So this is something that I constantly ask myself. Why did Constantinople trigger the search for a direct sea route? Well, because it was part of the overland route. Okay, the Silk Road went through Constantinople. It was one of the big emporias. Remember, by this time, all the other emporias were in Muslim hand. The whole of the Levant, the whole of North Africa, and this was sort of like the last a trigger in that sense. And if you bring up a map of Russia, let me try to get up a map of
Yeah,
Russia
go
and
ahead.
both
Go
of
ahead.
them.
While you do that, I'll just make a small pitch. Yours, please
Yeah.
like this program. As always, Abhijit has nuggets of wisdom buried in his rather large cranium, but we have to be careful which part of his head to tap. As long as we tap the right areas, we get great answers. But he's one of those guys. He's a genius. He remembers a lot of things, photographic memory, and so on and so forth. So please like this video. And I don't know if you've seen the one that we did at 6 p.m. today on why the dollar is mighty. It's a very important one for those of you who are looking to everything to do with finance. This is a very fine explanation of how the world has evolved since 1944, Bretton Woods. Go ahead. Have you got it?
Not yet. I'm getting maps of Europe. I'm
All
not
right. All
getting
right.
maps of the world in 1452. But see, I want to still, irrespective, show you uh, something quite interesting.
Yeah, yeah. Go ahead.
Uh, let's see. Damn. No, you can't actually make out the trade routes. I went on facing this as a problem. Uh, okay, irrespective. Basically, the thing is, if any of you manage to get your hands on a map of the world in 1450, uh, Constantinople fell in 1452, if I'm not mistaken. But if you get a map of the world at that point of time, you'll find that there were Muslim principalities and Christian principalities, like, say, Georgia, which were kind of aligned to the West and in opposition to the Ottomans, that allowed trade to pass through. The fall of Constantinople blocked the access to the Black Sea, which was important in getting equipment through, and it blocked access in the northern route, say north of the Black Sea, in just because it was just wild lands out there, extremely unsafe. Trade routes mostly pass through safe areas. It exacerbated the cost of that safety in passing through the well, Russia was still, kind of safe, but all the khanates that were east of it were absolutely, they were not controlled. It had completely disintegrated at this point. The Golden Horde was having, I mean, the Golden Horde had pretty much broken down by this point. So that became the issue, that the cost of that trade increased manifold. If you had to go north of the Black Sea instead of access to the Black Sea direct. Remember, sea travel is kind of, I mean, it had risks, but it was cheaper risks than and quicker than land travel. So they needed to find a land route, sorry, a sea route, and that's why it exacerbated the search.
Simple Life wants to know historically how nasty was the Shaivites versus Vaishnavites fight? Were they killing each other or just verbal spats?
Look, if you go by some of the stories that come out during the late Chora period, I think, is it Adi Raja Chora? Uh,
Could
they
be.
were
Yeah.
apparently quite nasty, but nowhere near the European wars of religion or the Muslim intra-Muslim wars. Huh? It was basically kings asking people. Well, the stories are all that the king asked this guy to accept the superiority of Vishnu or the superiority of Shiva, or you will be impaled on the Suli pe charado, and some miracle happens and they get saved. There are a lot of stories of people being killed, but these are not large scale massacres. And it's nowhere near as nasty as you understand a war of religion today.
Abhishek wants to know, sir, why don't we carry out targeted assassination of separatist leaders in India, just like Sheikh Ahmed Yassim or Zukhar Dudayav?
देखो भाई, उसके लिए बहुत ज्यादा इंटेलिजेंस की जरूरत है. यू नीड very precise, very clear intel. You need a national leadership that understands the use of force. Remember, in America, you listen to military advice and it's a very high level military advice that is constantly fighting across the globe. In Israel, uh, Benjamin Netanyahu was an elite commando at one point of time. There is not a single leader of Israel who hasn't served in some elite military unit at some point. They understand the use of force. In Russia, they understand, at least uh, have reasonably much less competent than, say, the Israelis or the Americans, as you're seeing in Ukraine. But they listen to that advice. In India, we hear a lot of bombast. We have not had experience of a real war for what, almost 50 years now.
True.
71 would be 50 years, no? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
You had Kargil, which was still not a full war, and you fought with your hands tied at the back with obsolete military tactics. I think there are lots of stories about Kargil that are yet to come out, which will probably never come out because the military never wants to learn from its own mistakes. They don't even want to spell out their mistakes. For example, the 62 war, the official history is still classified, no? So you don't know what happened. You've never really had an internal this thing. The other problem has always been that we're very land focused. We want to send in ground commandos to kill people instead of using drones to kill people. Third, remember, drones are mostly propeller driven, which are very easy to detect in a contested airspace like Pakistan. If you're flying over, say, Lebanon or Chechnya, where they don't really have an air force, it's fine. But everybody was talking about the Bayratkar drones in Ukraine. They're falling like, I mean, they're literally being swatted like flies right now because these weren't meant to go up against peer competitor enemies. They were meant to go up against Armenia that had very severe flaws in its thing because they had the S-400 at the top level, which were too expensive. The missile to shoot down the drone was probably more expensive than the drone itself. So there were lots of things that can be done which we do not have the experience with and we do not do. And there is the question of precedent. Remember, countries that use these kind of drone strikes, why is it that only and remember, Russia took out Zukhar Dudayav with a Sukhoi, was it a Sukhoi 24 or Sukhoi 27? Why is it that only Israel and America carry out these strikes? Because they have such overwhelming air power that it is impossible for the enemy to respond in kind. There was no way for the Chechens to respond in kind to the killing of Zukhar Dudayev. On the other hand, if you have a roughly equivalent air force that is capable of damage, for example, we tried Balakot, and the very next day we should have been prepared for a strike. We were not. And they came in and, well, they didn't achieve anything, but they did cause us embarrassment, right? You never use, well, it's not that you never, but the risk increases massively if you carry out targeted assassinations like that at that point.
Next question, please. Sambhav Jain wants to know, do you think that the
I
A10
think
Warthog,
we've answered this question.
yeah. Soham Majumdar wants to know, the Soviets never lacked in engineering prowess, be it space or military. What are the reasons that digital revolution has failed in the USSR?
Well, the USSR never realized the importance of digital whatever. Remember, the digital revolution changed. The most important thing was the economic change. Before that, the military used to lead in technology. The civilian sector used to follow. What the digital revolution and the microchip and all of that did was it led to the civilian sector blossoming and the military following. Even today, the military now buys things off the civilian sector. So for example, the sale of, at that time I think it was PS2. PS2 was banned to lots of countries because the chip in the PS2 was used for making imaging for missile seekers and things like that. PlayStation 2. Okay. Now, for this thing to succeed, you need an open capitalist market. That is where the civilian sector succeeds. If you try to control it, it's not going to succeed. Second, even at that point of time, you look at the size and scale and the propensity to consume of the Western market versus the Comecon, which is to say, the communist economies of Eastern Europe and the USSR. They were dwarfed by the size of the civilian market of the West. So it was market size, the lack of a private market, etc., etc. All of that played a huge role in this, and this is why economies are important.
Next question, please. Sambhav Jain again. Despite having an excellent metro networking, I still think Delhi's public transport lags Europe. What more should be done? Is it too low density due to homes instead of apartments?
I think, Sambhav, it's more to do with bad urban planning, because a lot of Europe, you'll have everything, crushed into the center. The highest densities in the center, and the bigger homes are where you go out. Whereas here, you find all the high rises are outside, and the center is all low rise, deliberately low rise. The government tells you you can't build more than 4 stories out there, which is why everybody moves to Noida and Gurgaon, because the land becomes cheaper, etc., etc. And your this thing has to expand all that way. Okay, so we, like I say, policy is intersectional, boss. You have to get your urban planning right, and this doesn't mean you go the American way. The American way is to concentrate people at the center, but then their suburbs are so huge. I mean, America doesn't really have a public transport system. What do you think of your public transport, the trams in San Francisco, Shree?
Not
Or the
great.
metro?
Not great.
Not great. They're shit.
Not great.
Let's call
Only
it for what
BART
it
is
is. They're
good.
shit.
Only BART is good. BART. The only thing that's good.
And New York Metro, I won't take it if under any circumstances. DC, yes. DC has a very decent public
Yeah,
transport
yeah, yeah.
system, but
DC
then
Metro
that's
is great. Yeah.
DC Metro is great, but then that's DC. They spent a
Hmm.
lot of money on the capital. Okay, so you can go to Maryland and you can go to Virginia using the metro system. It's fantastic. But
In
DC is the
fact,
exception.
they,
Technically, if you look at it, the all American cities are planned as car-based cities. In India, your problem is you simply don't plan for the kind of increase in volumes that you should be expecting. You plan for what is happening today, not for what is going to happen 30 years down the line. So your problem is that that metro that Korean built that you were so happy with, it is so jam packed and clogged. It's a nightmare taking it today. And then there were issues like, for example, the metro line to the airport ended in the middle of nowhere near that Sky City where the JW Marriott and things are. From where you could not get a taxi, you had to take an auto and drive another 2-3 kilometers to the airport. The issue was autos were not allowed inside the airport. So who the hell was going to take the airport line then?
I thought it now comes to one terminal, Abhijit. It comes to one terminal now.
Not that I know of.
Yeah, 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 yeah. International terminal, I think it comes. You can
No,
come down to Rajiv Chowk, which is Connaught Circus, from that place. I have done this.
no,
I've used it. I've used it.
not that.
Uh,
I've
so,
literally never heard of anybody use it right now.
so I don't remember which terminal, but this is
They
what I
were
did.
planning on connecting, because we only have Terminal 3 international terminal is also a domestic terminal for the high-end passengers.
Yeah, I don't remember which one, but there is one
They're
terminal.
planning on connecting it. They're planning on connecting it. It has
My dear
not
man,
happened so
this is
far.
5 years ago. I haven't used it after that. I'll tell you
Yeah,
what I
well, they
did,
still
right?
haven't connected it.
No, I'll tell you what I did. I had this big, international suitcase boxes that is very difficult to lug around. So what I did was I landed. I took that big suitcase and I left it in the left luggage, and that is one floor above the subway station. You just walk down one floor, and then you get the train. And I had all my smaller bags so that I could get around in Delhi relatively easy. I was there only for 2 days, so I came back, took it out, and then left for from Delhi. So it's there. I will find out. I'm sure we can find out while
Please
this
find
program
out.
is going. Yeah.
If that is actually happening, brilliant. I'll take it the next
But
time
I
round.
don't remember
Because
which terminal though. Yeah.
that thing up to Sky City or whatever it's called
Yeah.
it's the best metro trains. They're never crowded. They're lovely metro trains. They have all this ambient lighting, very comfortable seats, very very nice. But anyway, getting back to the question, uh, uh, you have all these critical crying issues which are not sorted out. Now, the new policy says that this is not going to happen. The question is, it's fine as a statement of intent that this shit isn't going to happen. But how are you going to change policy when you're using the exact same idiot workforce, planners and engineers and whatever, who didn't think about this? So the new airport is apparently going to come up somewhere in Greater Noida or something like that. The very first thing you need to be doing is to acquire land to make a direct connection between the old Delhi airport and the new Delhi airport, right? वो चल रहा है क्या? कब चलेगा? We don't know. We still don't know what the hell is going to happen out there. Let's see. I can't hear you, Sree. You're muted.
What is your favorite fighter jet and favorite gun if you have any? Please cite reasons.
Okay. I think my favorite fighter jet is purely based on aesthetic value and not on any performance statistic, because a fighter jet is a very very beautiful thing, and that would have to be the Mirage 2000. And favorite gun, I think my favorite guns have for a very long time been Beretta pistols. When I fire them when I'm in America, I really enjoy the feel, and there's just something nice about it. Let's put it that way.
Aditya B again, love your article pieces. What are some of the mistakes writers make nowadays, apart from misinformation? Advice to new article writers, please.
Your first paragraph needs to tie into your last paragraph. The last paragraph, your first para is essentially a summary of what you're going to say. Don't make it a murder mystery. Make your case right up front in the very first paragraph. The last paragraph ties in with the first paragraph. Second, each paragraph should flow from the previous paragraph. I've seen a lot of people just make disjointed paragraphs, disjointed thoughts, disjointed anecdotes. Those are the worst things to do. So remember, connect one and assume it's 5 paragraphs. Connect 1 and 5. And either if you're doing 3 disjointed things, summarize right at the beginning that you're going to explain paras to what you're going to say in 2, 3, 4. Or else make 3 flow from 2 and 4 flow from 3.
Next question, please. Sree, are you a vegetarian? Can you recommend any good vegan vegetarian restaurants in the US? Yes, I am a vegetarian. I don't even eat egg or any products based on eggs. Although, if it is put in cake and they give it to me and don't tell me, I usually eat it. That's okay. Once in a while, these things happen. There are a couple of chains now that are taking shape in United States. There's one for the West Coast that I absolutely love called Mylapore Express. Fantastic food. They deliver food to your house, 24 hours or so. And they are based out of Sacramento, which is about 200 miles from where I live. Fantastic group of people. They're growing very fast. Then there are the usual things like the Saravana Bhavan. Bombay Anand Bhavan is also coming up now. It's called A2B, Adayar Anand Bhavan. Yeah.
Adyar Anand Bhavan.
Yeah, that's also pretty popular these days. There's also a bunch of Chettinad restaurants now coming up. Whatever your palate is, there is something that will cater to it. Especially
You
the
have
Bay
Murugan
Area
Idli
is
shop?
full. Huh?
Do you have Murugan Idli shop in America?
Not yet, not yet. It will come soon, I'm
Because
hoping.
I've been in Jaipur for the last 3 days, and one of the people I was traveling with ordered idli,
Hmm.
and I'm just shocked at the kind of trash that passes off as an idli in North India. So till you've had something like Murugan, now the house, the idlis in my house that my mom always made, they were always as soft as Murugan, if not softer. The problem is, most people even today in the south don't know how to make a proper idli.
I,
And
I,
the so unless you've ever had, now people are like, why do people wax eloquent about idli? Well, it's, have you ever thought it's because you've never actually had a really good idli? If you've had a really great souffle, baked souffle, a proper idli should be light as air. You shouldn't even feel it. You hold it on one side, the other side should literally dangle. It's a state of mind, it's an emotion. It's literally a cloud captured in a UFO shape.
Abhijit,
And
have you? Go ahead, go ahead. Finish it. Sorry, I thought you're done.
It's so sad that people don't know how to make idlis. People don't even know how to grind the urad dal, how long to soak the urad dal. I've been looking at all these YouTube recipes of idli. Not one of them tells you कि the urad dal should never be soaked for more than 2 hours. The rice should never be soaked for more than 4 hours. You start by soaking the rice. When half the rice soak time is over, you then soak the urad. You do not use vendam. You do not use fenugreek seeds. And the urad has to be ground first in the best possible way. And when you lift it up, you shouldn't even feel. You should take a whole handful of the ground urad and you shouldn't even feel its weight. It should be like there's nothing in your hand. That determines, it's like beating an egg white to stiff peaks. So unless you've had Murugan idli, which is closest to the idli that we eat in my house, you've not really had an idli. Unless you've had a Karnataka benne dosa, you've not really had a dosa. Sure, I mean, Adyar Anand Bhavan makes decent dosa, but those resto dosas, they're not really a dosa. They're like,
Well,
is
for
Bollywood actually a representation of Indian culture? No. I mean, you chaps go around holding hands and singing. Sree, you tell me, did your wife and you go around singing around trees, holding hands with some mysterious orchestra playing in the background?
no, it didn't. But I'll tell you one thing though. In my daughter's wedding, we had all the things thrown in north, south, east, west, all the things that looked nice. And the wedding itself was a pretty long affair. We had haldi, we had mehendi, we had sangeet, and we had the normal South Indian wedding and the American reception. So everything was thrown in. For good measure.
Parango, sir. I am reading some of the comments. Rama Reddy and one Krishna Raj. Such shocking comments. Yo, Rama Reddy, what kind of Reddy Garu you are? You do not need. The fermentation lies in the urad. If you soak for more than 2 hours, it starts fermenting the water and makes the water turn alcoholic. You only soak the urad for as long, the vendam, the mentulu, whatever you call it, the fenugreek does not do fermentation.
Methi. Right.
It is the urad, which is why you throw away the soaked rice water, but you do not throw away the soaked urad dal water, which is what you use for softening it during grinding. Your urad dal is both your aerator in that like an egg, white, soft peak, hard peak thing. It is also your fermenter. So it is also your yeast, which is why you only wash the urad dal once and you only soak it for 2 hours. The fermentation needs to go once the batter has been ground, not into the water, in which case you're losing all the fermenting power.
I
And the
gotta.
secret, and the second secret, people use this rice rava. What is this rice rava nonsense? Yeah, you have to use castor beans. For every cup of rice, you use just two castor beans. Remove the shell and use two castor beans. What you'll find is when you're grinding it in your grinder, initially it will feel very sorry, English lena
Coarse.
yeah, it will feel kind of coarse, kind of like sandpapery. And suddenly something about that castor oil dynamics, castor oil dynamics is a whole stream of physics. It sets that castor does something to it where it actually becomes like, when you're cooking bhindi, there's that mucus
Right, right, right. Gooey stuff.
goo
Yeah.
that comes out of it. It suddenly you will hear the sound of your mixie, not
Change.
mixie,
Grinder,
the wet
grinder.
grinder change, and you hold it up and it would have become extremely soft powder. It's actually ground extremely fine. And castor oil helps you achieve that. Then you mix it. You add the salt right in the beginning, not at the end. And then when you're making the idli, you don't bloody deflate it, mix it up all over again and deflate it. I'm sorry, I get very passionate about bad idlis. And all you horrible people doing idli genocide, you're destroying my cuisine. Shameless fellows. Reddy Garu, shame on you. Change your name from Rama Reddy to Rama Naidu. You Naidu, secret intelligence agent. And Krishna Raj, yes, 4 hours for soaking rice. Yes, only 4 hours. You do not soak the rice for more than 4 hours. You do not soak the urad dal for more than 2 hours. Never. And no goddamn methi dana in it.
So, in the United States, especially on the West Coast, we have solved this problem. There is a company called Shasta Food that gives you the batter ready to go. Today, in fact, I made brown rice idlis. Very, very nutritious. Have you tried those?
Shasta idlis, in America. I've not
Yeah.
tried. I will never try idlis in
No, no, no.
America.
When you
Thank you very
come,
much.
whenever you are coming, I'll treat you to millet dosa, okay, and brown rice idli and normal idli also. That way you can see what that stuff you said. Fool jaise idli, ah ha ha ha. That sort of stuff. Everything we'll check it out.
Okay. Bring a packet on this thing next time. We should give, if they're doing a good job in America, we should give them some free publicity also.
Heck, I'll take you to the place where it is made. He's a good friend of mine. We can have a real nice chat. We can ask him. You can ask him all these tough questions, and I'll video the thing to see what my good friend Mani says, because he's the owner. He will tell us how many castor seeds he's putting, and so on and so forth. I know he puts vendayam. That's for sure. That is methi. Methi.
You should never put.
Huh. All right. Good segue into food. Always makes me feel good. Sachin, is there a possibility that we have already reached a 5 trillion economy if we include the unorganized sector too?
Quite possible. Because, the unorganized sector is huge. But I will always temper my expectations, because a lot of the unorganized sector, do you know what? I noticed this time that for a while now, even street vendors don't have cash and change on them. Everything's being done on phone pay. So I think a lot of it has actually changed the nature of the economy. But I'm in two minds about this, because I really don't know. It's been like 4 or 5 years since I toured some seriously rural areas. But then how much do they actually contribute to the economy? I don't know. So I'm a bit split on this 50-50. I think at some level, we maybe not 5, but say about another 500 to 600 billion. So we're at 3 now, maybe up to about 4. But then again, that propensity to consume and the net output in those areas just isn't high enough, because if you're anywhere near a good output, you would have transitioned to digital payments and things like that. So I don't know the answer to this, honestly. I sometimes feel we're over three, and sometimes I feel not.
Abhishan Shetty wants to know, hi Abhijit, how do you think Tulu evolved as the second oldest Dravidian language after Tamil? Did you try Kori Roti, Neer Dosa Sukka, Goli Baje, Gadbad?
What is gadbad? I've never had gadbad. But I have neer dosa. We actually make very good neer dosa at home. So my landlord and landlady, they actually own this a chain of restaurants in Delhi called Karnataka. They're lovely people and they run this lovely restaurant. And they taught me how to make the perfect neer dosa. So I actually have neer dosa a lot with fish curry and chicken curry and things like that. Kori roti, yes, I've tried it. I'm not a big fan of it, but I'm a huge fan of neer dosa. Goli bhaji, I'm not a big like neer dosa is my
Go
it's my
to,
kind of
go
yeah,
to.
it's my go-to if I want something soft and silky and nice made quickly with some curry.
Next question, please. Debanjan Banerjee wants to know, does the current lack of democracy in Pakistan and Bangla be attributed to being unfairly treated during 1947 in terms of resource distribution?
No, I don't think so. Uh, I know Hussein Haqqani makes this point, at least in Pakistan, that they got, say, 17% of the resources and 20% of the land, about 33% of the military. Uh, this isn't the only case where this happened. There were a lot of opportunities. Remember, for the first few years, for the first 2, 3 years, Pakistan was not controlled by the army. We still don't have a clear understanding of Jinnah's dynamic with the Pakistan army or Liaquat Khan's dynamic with the Pakistan army. Uh, it's a point he makes, but I'd like to see a sort of uh, causal link specifically in what the dynamics of Jinnah and Liaquat Ali Khan's thing with this thing was. In Bangladesh, remember, it was Sheikh Mujibur Rahman himself who banned all the opposition and declared it a single party state based on the Mukti Bahini that he had created because they were all armed thugs. So it wasn't unfair treatment in either cases. They asked for certain parts of land which they got. They were not in a majority in the other parts of the land, but they wanted 33% of the army. They asked for it. So what? Just to skew it, we are meant to give them more land, is it? That's not the way it works. The partition was done as per majority. The resource distribution was done as per uh, uh, population, and the military distribution was done as per what they wanted it to do, whatever. And remember, Jinnah had a golden opportunity. I want you to read, what is this? Is it Ian Wilkinson, the Princeton scholar who wrote about the Indian military? Indian leaders, Sardar Patel, even Nehru, Raj Gopalachari, all these people were thinking right since the early 1930s on what an Indian army should look like to make India coup proof. India did not become coup proof as an accident. It was very carefully thought out, calibrated. And it's one of the few things where all these leaders agreed with each other, despite all their differences. On the other hand, with Pakistan, what is the first thing that Jinnah does? He declares that if cabinet takes a decision, I still have the right to overrule it. And this is something called the reserve powers of the Governor General, which is there in Commonwealth statutes, which is incidentally uh, led to the Australian political crisis and the Gough Whitlam government. Was it Gough Whitlam? I think it was Gough Whitlam. He was dismissed by the governor using the exact same reserve powers of the Governor General, which Pakistanis have used. But remember, Jinnah's first resort was to use the military he got. He wanted that military to use the military like in Kashmir, and it was not the unfair division. So no, in Bangladesh, no, absolutely not. Next.
Abhishek wants to know, sir, is French licite gold standard of secularism in the world? Why French gives
Let,
special privilege to Catholic Church as it?
let's go one by one. Let's go one by one.
Yeah.
Well, look, Laicite has its own problems. It is look. We're dealing with human beings here. There is no such thing as the perfect system. Okay, everything comes with pros and cons. Do I think that Laicite is the best system around? Yes, because its application in the way it has become the national dogma, where every person, it is more the education of the French state and the systems surrounding Laicite that have made it so powerful and useful rather than Laicite itself. We could have Laicite in India, but if every Tom, Dick, and Harry has a different interpretation of secularism, what is the point of that? Here, Laicite, the interpretation was standardized. It was shoved down the throat of every bureaucrat and every politician. If you do not get your basic concepts of Laicite right, you will probably fail your French social studies exam in whatever classes you study it in. And the French education system is a very strict system. Huh? They're much stricter than the Indian system. They don't beat you up. That's a different matter, but whatever. So Laicite is good because the people there and the education system there have made it good. American secularism and Indian dharma nirpeksha are bad because we're a third world country that is screwed. हम तो हर चीज की screw up कर देते हैं. We screwed up our dharma nirpeksh just like we screwed up Chinese food and what we call Anglo-Indian food or continental food here. Like the Italians, for example, get heart attacks with what we pass off as Italian food out here. Pretty much like that. We've done that to our own dharma nirpeksh. The Americans, there is a contextual history to how it evolved. These were crazy lunatic Brits who were considered extremist even in England, who moved here in the Mayflower or Mayfair. What was it called? The boat? Mayflower.
Mayflower.
They were nut jobs. They were like the jihadists of their time. They were crazy, nasty little shits. If you get all this thing, oh, they were loving, caring people who shared Thanksgiving Day dinner. Yeah, they probably poisoned the turkey that they gave to the Indians and then went at night and killed them or gave them smallpox blankets. They were all bloody psychos. Okay? So there is an evolutionary history out there. There is a history of third-rated, third-worlded corruption here. France is the one that, and mind you, after a lot of trial and error, they got it right in the final. Is this the Third Republic or the Fourth Republic? They got it right there. And why French give special privilege to Catholic Church? No, they do not give special privileges to the Catholic Church, boss. They do not. Remember, nuns wear it in the schools that the Catholic churches run. If you run an Islamic school, you can do what you want. On state funds, no, you cannot go wearing the habit of a nun into a state school at all.
All right. Now, the remaining questions will be handled afterwards in a separate session. Please always subscribe to our channel too, because that's where you'll get the extra questions answered. We're trying to bring up our subscription on the channel too. It's like think of it as a plan B channel, just in case plan A channel, because of some of the outrageous statements that Abhijit Iyer-Mitra causes YouTube to penalize us. So we have to have a plan B always. So if anything happens, you know who to blame. Thank you so much, Abhijit.
Do you think we should have a PGurus tutorial on idli making?
Where, you know what? So happens I'm going to be in your neck of the woods next month. I'll be happy to come. I'll be happy to make the entire setup where you'll have, your apron and everything. You can start from the basic principles. We'll shoot everything. We'll edit it, make it really looking
Who
compelling.
puts on apron while while making idli, man?
What do you want? Tunde? Tunde? Just the tunde?
Next thing you'll be saying I should wear gloves and then I should shave all the hair on my hands and all that nonsense. Arey, understand? It is all that filth and dirt in the chef's hand that actually give the idli the taste. That is what starts off the fermentation process.
You are a real loco guy. All right, sounds good. Thank you so much.
Before making idli, it is actually a rule in all these restaurants that the chef should be scratching their pubes and then scratching their hair and picking their nose like that, and then only you should handle the
Siva.
idli.
All right. Thank you so much. We will do that and we'll do more. Once again, thanks for liking, sharing, and subscribing to our channel. We'll be back again next Monday. Namaskar.